Coming up on Mountain Hermeneutics, the Christian right. What is that? Who are they? Is it the same thing as Christian conservative? Can you even be Christian without being conservative? We're going to get into that. So keep it right here. You're listening to Mount Hermeneutics, where three Marines give their perspective on God, faith, and spirituality with a heavy lean on the divine council worldview. This is not your grandma's Sunday school, nor is it always for the Christian faint of heart. Nothing about who we are or what we say make us experts. But you better believe we'll have a take, and perhaps it won't suck. I mean, if you want to edit it, Brian,
I don't want to edit it. That's the Holy Spirit's job.
She thinks your humor is, I don't understand why she thinks you're funny, but
you know I'm funny. You've always thought I was funny.
Oh boy,
you're jealous of how funny I am.
I don't know why we're friends, but so
feel attacked.
Well,
you guys are always bullying me.
Stop being wrong.
I'm not okay. way ahead of you, man. I beat you there,
fellas. What's happening?
What up,
hey, Trey?
So let's see. With my son and his hamstring injury, it's weird to have a Saturday during track season where I'm not being, insufferable track dad. So that's annoying. So now it's me.
Your suntan is fading.
Yes. So now it's basically me and my son looking at all the track times of like the big sprinters,
just sitting around watching all the other dudes.
Yeah, we're watching them, and then we've come to this weird realization where we're like, I think the times out of Florida and the South in general are trash. I think they're lying. Because every time someone runs in Florida, there's like this obscene time. So there's a Canadian dude, and I'm sure Malachi Murray is a nice guy. I don't know him. But he's lost to my son head to head. I look at him, in his last 10 races of last season and this season, and he's running good times, but all of a sudden he goes down to Florida and runs like a 10.03.
Maybe it's that hyper oxygenated air down there.
Maybe it is. So he's like, my son's like, and then also the high school kid who's the world leader right now and he ran it out of Florida high school. I'm like, So there's lots of, but then when guys get on the track, like a bunch of all the top times all were ran in Florida or Louisiana somewhere. But then they get on a track like in Bermuda or something, and they don't perform.
Suddenly they're running normal times that are appropriate.
Yes. So maybe, they're peaking too soon, or maybe they're doing something in their training where it doesn't matter because they lifted weights yesterday because they care about June more than they care about right now. But I think the Bermuda Grand Prix, when you're talking about making money, I would assume you want to win that. So they ran pedestrian times with +3 wind. So I'm like, okay. So then basically, me and Cooper are like, you know what? It doesn't matter. First of all, Malachi Murray's Canadian, so he doesn't matter.
Right. Relative to the Olympics. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
unless you're actually
Canada
in
matters.
the Olympics, then it matters, but that's different.
Right. And then also I say, you know what? These dudes have to beat you, on the same track under the same conditions, and they were doing, and then you just got to do it. You got to win.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Hopefully he can get healthy and get in the right. He can peak after getting healthy. Right. That's the tough thing.
That's right.
4 weeks. That's the expectation.
Yeah. So it's only been a week, so it's been 8 days since so he's still, he's got bruising and stuff on the back. He's doing his treatment every day. So
he's doing all that like infrared sonogram, all that,
yeah,
like
all the things,
all that extra stuff that nobody knows if it really works, but it's like you're gonna not do it. You don't want to not do it, and it not.
That's
works,
right.
So, yeah.
Last time I pulled a hammy, I was hobbling around for like 6 months, but Cooper's probably his recovery powers are probably superior to mine. So
I mean, maybe because he's hurt all the time. So, but
That's why I
at
sent
the
you that video of Tyreek Hill with the hamstring
yeah,
thing he was doing.
yeah, those are sick, man. So what's up, Brian? What's up, man? What are you doing?
What am I doing? I was trying to think of something exciting, and I'm not even going to try. I mean, I don't have any kids going to the Olympics, so it's
Right.
I can't even compete.
I mean, who does, right? Like,
My pet lion was terminally ill, but she got better. That's cool.
that is
So
cool.
Better, like no longer terminally ill, or just
well, the vet
Actually, Brian,
said,
you need to give an update here because my mother asked about it.
okay.
Linda wants to know how the lion is doing and what the lion's name
the
is.
listeners are invested at this point, Brian.
Yes, that's right.
The lion's name is Snowball.
Snowball.
Which
Private Snowball. You like
which-
that name?
which made sense when she was a kitten, but now that she's grown, I wish I'd come up with something less, toddlerish. But yeah, she went blind about a month or two ago. 4 vets going back and forth from a specialist to a general person, and a couple of them told me I should euthanize her. Anyway, it was a fungal infection. She has a pill. She's doing a lot better. She's still blind, but you wouldn't know it watching her. She can get around pretty well. She's eating now, and she's still tries to hunt birds and stuff. And
You should change your name to Daredevil.
maybe I'll do that. But I don't think she'll answer to Daredevil, though. She knows
Never know.
Snowball. But
if you hear Ludwig von Beethoven in the back, that's my granddaughter. Hey, sweetie. Thank you.
yeah, so that's what's going on here. Linda, thanks for asking. I'll pass along your regards to Snowball. Maybe she'll come by and I'll pick her up. But Matt, what's up with you, man?
Man, got to spend a little time in the storm shelter last night. Things got a little hairy here in Oklahoma. And we had like 16, 17 touchdown tornadoes last night across the state. Last I heard 2 fatalities and quite a bit of damage. So it was a rough night, but we do what we do, and we get underground and hang out. I was only underground for a couple of minutes, so it's not a big deal. But,
I slept through the whole thing.
Did you? Yeah. It was all mostly all the real nastiness was a little to the south and southeast, and then we've got stuff out in the southeast, out where my in-laws are, as we speak. I've already seen a photo of an actual tornado. Looks like it's about a mile away from my mother-in-law's house. So, it's living La Vida Loca in Oklahoma.
Man, no. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was gonna move out there. Nope.
It's fine. You just go underground. It's like you just,
And you just wait it out.
So
yeah. And the cool thing is, once they're over with, as long as you didn't lose your power, the weather's super nice after a tornado. So it's like it comes through and then it leaves, and it's like, oh, it's all brisk outside and the birds are chirping and it's super nice.
So that movie Twister, I saw that in the theater in Australia when we were doing a exercise with the Aussies, and we were on Liberty. So I went with a bunch of like people in the Australian military, and we got out, and I mentioned that I graduated high school in Oklahoma, and they were all astonished that I survived to adulthood, because
right, because they just assume we all die. We have like a 60% mortality rate in Oklahoma,
and then we get like 3 F5 tornadoes a day here in any given place. And
well, that's why they have such strict abortion rules, because you got to repopulate all these people that are just getting murked by
all
change.
those conservatives.
Conservatives is
it's one of the reasons,
but it's just getting killed always, all day, every day, per day.
Yeah.
Other than that, though, that was about it for the week. Trying to think if anything else of interest or import occurred, and I don't think so. So no, I think that's it.
I think in Louisiana, maybe conservatives down there get some things wrong, but last week when that dude pled guilty to raping a 14-year-old girl, and the judge sentenced him to 50 years in prison and also physical castration, I'm gonna call that a win.
I call that a huge dub.
I had to look that up because Yeah, I didn't realize we had that. We had those laws on the books that you could
That we had
castrate.
that ability or that existed as an outcome. Yeah.
So I guess it
we
hasn't happened in forever. So
we
because usually
tried.
it's a chemical castration.
No, it's surgical. I looked it up.
No,
It's
I know.
just,
No, usually
oh, right,
they in
Okay.
lots of states. I don't know about Louisiana, but in many states, it's a chemical castration. In fact, it's the same drug they use for, you know, the other
for
Mhm.
yeah,
for gender affirming care,
correct, correct.
as it's called,
For
which
children.
I a part of me died just using their terminology, even doing it ironically, because it's yeah. But yeah, we tried to get that a law like that passed in Oklahoma, like probably in 2005 or 6, and it got shot down, and it was the ACLU was involved, and
Although we did just pass this week, I think on Friday, we affirmed the anti-daylight savings time. So we're the 21st or the 20th or 21st state to pass that law. So we're all just waiting for the federal government to authorize states to unlock from daylight savings time.
I don't think they can. Where in the Constitution does it give the federal government
I'm sure it's
authority
the
to
Commerce
do that?
Clause. It's
Hmm.
always the Commerce Clause.
Well, there's states that don't do it,
No, there's only Arizona, and they were grandfathered.
and Hawaii.
Well, Hawaii didn't exist when we passed the law. I guess I
Oh,
don't
I
know.
guess.
That might have been under their terms that they negotiated, because they were like, "Why do we care, brah? We're so far
Wait,
away. It's not like
is
they're not part of the
Nevada?
continent."
Doesn't Nevada do it too? I think Nevada does it too,
No.
because Vegas and LA don't have the same time always. I guess maybe that's just Phoenix. Maybe I'm just conflating
Well,
Phoenix
I
and
think there's a couple of
Phoenix and
cities.
Las Vegas.
I think there's somehow there's a couple of cities that don't do it within their states, because I'm aware of, like, I want to say somewhere in the Ohio region, there's some city that gets disconnected somehow. But to my knowledge, it's only Arizona, and it was grandfathered. Which, I have a personal funny story about that one at Fort Huachuca. But
Okay.
so my first weekend in Fort Huachuca was daylight savings, and PT, was
I
coming
remember
up,
that weekend.
and everybody. No, it wasn't my first weekend, but it was like one of my first weeks, and they're like, all right, PT tomorrow. Don't forget, everybody. PT's at 05. And I think I even said, or somebody said, well, we got daylight savings, right? And they're like, no, we don't do daylight savings here. And I was like, right.
So you're trying to get the new guy.
I actually remember that conversation in the little lobby of the Black Bull.
Yeah, so I show up. I was like, me and like two other new nub Marines are sitting outside in our PT gear, like half asleep for an hour, just sitting around sleeping in the hallway because we didn't understand what was going on, and then it found out it was actually
cell phones have ruined all the fun with it.
Right,
because they just automatically
update. You just set your alarm and you go to bed.
Yeah. Like I remember, when I was a kid going to church, and we either missed it or we were too early. Like, where the hell is everybody?
Right.
They just canceled church. Like, what's going on? And my dad's like, that damn it, no one said, man. He didn't speak in coherent sentences.
So he spoke in pointy grunty.
Yeah, I was like, man. I was like, we woke up early for what?
Exactly. Yeah. Man. Yeah, but I for sure wasn't being tricked into that, not missing PT and then getting tormented afterwards. So
and I showed a child J-Dub. I mean, we wore 3-piece suits, dog. Like
there's a picture of me wearing a 3-piece suit from
Sears. That's the 80s though, right? Like,
yeah.
I think that we all did. That was the thing.
Yep. My big old fat tie. Like, because your neck's so little, and just a forward overhand knot that's like gigantic on your neck.
It's very,
that's probably why I still like fat ties. Gotta have a fat knot.
All right. So Christian conservatism. Or the maybe we'll start with the Christian right.
So what does that mean? What is the Christian right?
The Christian right. So basically it's the Christian people that lobby the government. So basically it's part of the Christian movement in in politics
So is that
more
the same
than
thing? I mean, I always refer to those as the evangelicals. Like
yeah, it's
that's how I hear them referred to in from a political standpoint as the evangelicals,
yeah,
which
they
has
are.
nothing to do with their actual religious stance. It's just that they're known in the political circles as being, religiously focused or religiously biased, I guess would be the
Right. So evangelical Protestants, Roman Catholics, uh, Orthodox Jews, mainline Protestants, Latter-day Saints, they're all kind of part of that lobby. And they're fairly new. Like they came to kind of prominence in the 70s and then all the way through like they backed Reagan hardcore and then that's that whole conservative
you
movement.
think, I mean, them coming to prominence in the 70s probably because before that, up into the 50s, like anybody who was even remotely conservative was also evangelical or the religious right? I mean, it seems such.
Right. And I would guess that, through the 60s liberal movement,
Mhm.
where, the young generation kind of flipped to that side, became the broad burning protesters, mainly Vietnam and civil rights. And then you have the 70s where that kind of continued on, but at the same time, uh there was no law and order. So if you look at like crime stats in America, right, like the 70s were a mess. So there was super high inflation, super high crime rate. New York City was always a talking point for us Westies, our West Coast people. You had movies that started with the whole vigilante scene, like Death Wish, and so it was kind of this whole
Interesting.
movement toward law and order, which was a perfect kind of way for the Christian conservative movement to like wedge in there and talk about things like, law and order and individual responsibility and kind of like now, right? Like we live in like this American hellscape with this crazy inflation. I mean, my
Yeah,
dad was telling me,
as you were saying that, I was like, it literally sounds like the 2020s up until the vigilante movies. I was like,
but
the only part of that wasn't applicable to
but
today.
Well,
is it
not yet.
not yet, right?
Right.
So, I think we're moving toward movies like Escape from New York and
Mhm.
stuff like that. It was cool for cinema anyway. Dirty Harry became like the vigilante, police officer that was super cool back when
Mhm.
cops could shoot people in the face and everyone's like, yeah, police with rules.
Right.
And now like every cop show you see, they shoot him in the shoulder and leg, which is super dangerous because I also watch, doctor shows and people bleed out all the time. Like it's a terrible idea to shoot somebody in the leg. Holy smokes. Anyway, in the leg. The
I
one
actually,
Sean
I'd
Taylor died
actually,
for getting shot in the leg.
yeah, I'd actually read this is a little bit dated, but in Dade County, Florida, they were training. For those that don't know, I'm probably the resident gun nut on this show. Um, so I read a lot of stuff about like excuse me, police training and what calibers they're using in different districts and stuff. Because there's always the arguments about you got to have a 40 caliber, not a 9mm, and all that kind of stuff. Well, anyway, Dade County, they were having such a problem with people being high on either PCP or some synthetic drug that was causing suspects that had been shot to basically fight through the pain and not act as if they had been shot. Um, they were teaching the police officers to double tap to center mass and then fire what they were calling an anchoring shot. So basically double tapping the chest and then aiming for a leg, because it doesn't matter if you feel pain or not. If you get shot in the leg, the trauma that it causes makes walking a
Difficult, right?
biomechanical impossibility, right? So it doesn't matter about, oh, it doesn't hurt. Like you blow, tendons off of the knee and suddenly, the thigh doesn't work and the dude falls over. So I thought that was interesting that was actually, a training policy because of the high levels of uh I don't know what you call it, psychotropic drugs or whatever that people were
Yeah.
taking down there. I don't know what that has to do with conservatism or the Christian right, but it was
Yeah,
it was an interesting throwaway.
I assume we're talking about this because of the election coming up.
Well, I think it was coming out of last week, right? Like we spent a
Yeah.
lot of time talking about New Age Christianity and kind of, you know, this progressivism in Christianity. And as we were wrapping, we kind of bumped into the concept of conservatism as it relates to Christianity. And then, you know, can you be good and be progressive? And, you know, is everything conservative good? And I think that was kind of a little bit of what drove some of the kind of the follow on here. So this was kind of like a part 2 to that almost.
Yeah.
But yes, also because of, you know, politics that's a never ending reason to have these conversations.
Just so you know, like last week I was going on like 3 hours of sleep. Like the night before I slept like 3 hours and then I woke up and that was all I could do. So I was kind of impaired when we.
So if you listened to the show last week and you thought Brian was a bumbling idiot, now you know why. Now you know.
I kind of feel like that's fair. Like I kind of was a bumbling idiot.
So maybe you'll have better views, and you know, maybe he'll get combative. Maybe we'll.
In the moment, I felt like that guy I'm looking at is a bumbling idiot. Oh, that's me. Oh, yeah, that's me. So, but anyway, I feel like there's a lot of stuff I would have said, but just the noggin wasn't working. But so I don't quite remember how we got there. So
I mean, we're just gonna go where the day takes us today. You know,
all right.
Christian conservatives. You know, it's interesting. Their views, and if you just look it up like a Wikipedia, the very first view has to do with education. So you have like they strongly advocate for, you know, school vouchers and, you know, the ability to choose where your children get educated, and whether or not, you know, those vouchers cover, you know, private schools such as, you know, Catholic schools or Christian schools. Another thing with that is like evolution. So do we teach evolution in schools, or creationism, or, you know, some kind of intelligent design, which we've talked about this topic before, where, you know, why not both? Why isn't evolution part of an intelligent design? Well, it depends on, you know, it depends on how it's taught and where in history it is, and whether or not they deny God while they're saying it.
Yeah, I think that might be the most frustrating component of what I refer to as evangelicals in the political spectrum, because I feel like they create this us them mentality that says if you identify as a Christian, you have to essentially refute any and all science at a given moment, which is
because the Bible's
a
science textbook, right? That's what.
Right. Yeah. And then where does it stop, right? Because if you go, well, I don't believe this, I don't believe that, I don't believe that because of the Bible. Well, it's like, well, where do we start believing science? Because, like, you know, we can't discredit that ice freezes at 32 degrees, or, you know, paper combusts at 214 degrees Fahrenheit. 200.
We are in the Matrix, so all of that's bullshit anyway. It's a construct.
This is probably the only time I'll ever take the young Earth creationist side, but they would argue that they're not anti-science. It's that evolution is unscientific, and that they're on the side of science.
That's true.
I don't accept that argument. I think, but
I have found myself in these conversations online quite a bit here lately. I'm in a Facebook group called Christian Apologetics, and I'm sure there's 8 trillion different apologetics groups, right? But in this one, it seems like once a week somebody has to post an anti-evolution meme into the group.
Drives me up the wall.
Every time I just go, oh, here we go again, huh? Like, can we stop this? Like, knock it off.
I absolutely this isn't, you know, this is slightly off topic, but I absolutely hate when people think Christian apologetics means anti-evolution.
Right.
Like it should be the resurrection, should be the moral argument.
I've asked that every single time. I'm like, what does this have to do with the proof of Christ? Like somebody tell me how, and they're like, well, because if Darwin's wrong, then that means evolution's wrong, which means you have to go to, you know, intelligent design. I'm like, this is a terrible way to get to apologetics.
Yeah, and those two things are intelligent design, and just for people listening, intelligent
I'm going to
design.
cut you off. Brian wrote a blog about this.
No,
No,
I did, but that's kind of out of date.
I like it though. It's one of my favorite blogs of yours that I've read.
Well,
just because I like how sassy you are with the intro.
Okay. Well, the updated version is me disavowing much of what's in it. But so like I've kind of like intelligent design is not the same as young earth creationism, and is not antagonistic to evolution. Evolution can be,
I agree with that.
But these are often spoken of as if they're
That's
different.
Precisely the
terms.
problem. Yeah.
But
like I think we might be three of the only people on planet Earth that have this view.
Yeah. And the problem is I never debate science with young earth creationists, even like that's what they try to argue it on scientific merits. It's really that they're misreading the Bible. I try to challenge their reading of scripture, because I mean I don't, frankly, they're not really qualified to argue science. It's a Dunning-Kruger issue with their scientific arguments. But anyway, now that I've angered all of our young earth creationist listeners,
I've actually picked up a new little catchphrase that I use when I'm talking with young earth creationists, because I say, okay, look, if we're going to have this conversation and you're going to tell me that the infallible words in the Bible are why you believe that the earth is only 6,247 days or whatever it is, I said, that also means you believe the earth is flat. And they go, huh? And I go, I'm like, you can't start there and not end with the earth is flat. Like, that's the only reasonable pathway to go if you're going to take every single word and believe that they mean what they mean, and it is the actual facts, and it's not just simply a human interpretation of the environment. And then obviously the conversation devolves, because you can't have that kind of a conversation in internet format, right? Like, it would require words.
I do that, and I also ask, do you think that snakes literally talk?
Right.
Is that a common feature of the pre-fall creation? Of course not. That's the devil. Okay, well then you're not reading it as literally as you insist upon, because the text does not say that's the devil. It says, now the serpent was more crafty than any of the other wild creatures that that God had made. So this is a snake. This is a common snake, according to the text.
Well, the snake used to talk, and it used to walk upright. And
apparently it had legs.
And God was pissed and said, now you slither on the ground.
Yeah.
Now you slither.
And you can't talk.
and no more talking for now.
I wrote it on the refrigerator. The snake cannot talk anymore.
No longer, ever again.
But
so decrees the Lord.
I was trying to think of a subtle, crafty, delicate way to steer it back to.
Well, so I mean, I think one of the questions I have,
but I'm clumsy and unclever. So
yeah, so a steering point here is, conservatism and Christian conservative Christianity, right? Like, the word conservative means things don't change and they stay the same, right? In fact, so to rehash the conversation that Dre and I started to have last week, and I don't remember if it was before or after we hit the stop button on the recording, but it was basically, Dre made the argument that it was conservatives that were the abolitionists with regards to slavery. And I said they weren't, they were progressives. And that was actually what started the conversation. Right. And the point that I was making was I was being literal, in the sense of a conservative wants things to stay the same. And during slavery, being a conservative would mean you want slavery to continue, right? Not the people that we would lump as conservatives, people with that are conservative minded, right?
I think it boils down to what is it you're trying to conserve?
Agreed. Yeah.
And I think it was Frederick Douglass who said that the U.S. Constitution is a promissory note to the abolition of slavery. Like the point,
right? He did, and even if you go across the world to different conservative movements, it depends on where you're starting from.
Right.
So like a conservative movement in England would be a lot different than in the Americas, because to them conservatism would have to do with the monarchy, right?
Right.
So they've moved past that, and now they're something else.
Well,
Where-
the monarchy or the Magna Carta, which limited the
Sure.
monarchy, which was kind of a precursor to the
Well,
Constitution. And like my point in bringing up Frederick Douglass was like if you he pointed to the Constitution, and if you look at the writings of the founding fathers, even slave owners, like their understanding of the purpose of the Constitution was that we're going to abolish slavery. That's part of what we want for this new nation. In the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson, one of the evils that he talked about being imposed upon the colonies by the crown was slavery. And that's one of the things he was mad about, even though he owned slaves, which, I'll leave it to wiser people than me to figure out why that was. But Thomas Jefferson, if you take his writings to heart, he hated slavery. He wanted to abolish it. He tried to write that into the Constitution, but they knew that would be a barrier to ratification, but they still enshrined the principles toward the abolition of slavery in the Constitution, hence Frederick Douglass's remark about it being a promissory note to the end of slavery. So if what you want to conserve is the foundational principles of the nation, then yeah, absolutely.
Which would be American
Abolitionists-
conservatism.
Right. Abolitionists were conservative.
yeah.
And,
So like,
and the Confederacy actually tried to have their own constitution, right? So because they
secession
wanted
was.
to enshrine all that stuff because of economy and because of what's it called, parentalism. Is that a term where
Paternalism, I think.
paternalism, conservatism, which basically is like, hey, the reason why we have slaves is because it's for the greater good. It's for everyone. They're not able to do things in society. We should run them. And a lot of that
that
kind
sounds
of
like
goes,
this sounds like the DNC today, right?
well, I mean,
Bazinga.
I mean,
I had to
I
say,
might have been going
I know
there.
the three of us know that I had to say that out loud for
Right.
anybody that wasn't picking up on the subtlety that Dre was laying down.
so
Yeah.
they have to. It's for their own good.
They don't
and
have
it's-
any agency.
It's for the greater good, which is
Yeah.
kind of where,
Be up at the gate.
well, we can't pick mommy up at the gate yet. And we're kind of moving off of Christian conservatism, but I think
No,
where
I think this is essential
think-
to it, though.
I think you're right, but I think we get confused because we use terms like left and right, and then we combine terms of left and right with conservative or liberal when they're not the same thing. So, and what I mean by that is that on the left, you have collectivism. What's good for the state is good for everyone. And then if you go far enough right, you have complete and utter anarchy, where it's complete individualism. But if you have a conservative movement, or even what's deemed a right-wing movement, it's just another side of a left coin. For example, fascists are always considered right? But
Which is silly, but
they're
and by silly I mean
wrong.
something way worse. But I don't want to be too inflammatory.
Right. So, but it's part of a collective society where the state runs the show. So just because they add corporations into that, and just because the state runs corporate, doesn't make it any different when infringing on rights.
I want to.
And when and the American
ahead.
experiment has more to do with the government not choosing your rights, but protecting them. And then their job also is not only protect you from the government infringing on your rights, but to prevent other citizens
Mhm.
from infringing on your rights,
And
which is where the
foreign-
law and order
and
portion
hostile
of our
foreign
show
powers.
comes into.
I want to make 2 points in response. Well, one is not in response to that. The other is, first off, just to make it interesting and to kind of like put maybe a point on the show. My contention is that if you are a mature, thoughtful Christian, you're a conservative. That might anger some people. I'm happy to defend it.
So I
I'm
want to
happy
lodge
to fight it
before
out.
you finish your second point. I'm going to argue that you are not a Christian conservative, but I want you to carry on with your second point so we can come back to that.
That should be a fun discussion.
That should be good.
Because I kind
You're
of think
fucking
I
wrong
am.
about yourself, buddy.
But the other point is, Dre, you seem to be framing the political spectrum in terms of, on the far left, how much government you have, basically the size of government. The far right is less government, the far left is more government. Would that be accurate?
Sure. Yeah.
I think a better framing would be and freedom. The far right is maximum freedom. The far left is maximal government oversight, limited freedom. Because the left always talks about freedom, but it's only ever in terms of sexual freedom. Can you get an abortion? And can you express yourself sexually however you want? But in all other things, they're happy to let the state plan everything: the economy, education,
Hate speech.
what speech is acceptable. I would say that the far right of the political spectrum is maximal freedom. You need some government to have maximal freedom. If you have no government, then there's no freedom. You just descend in, you don't descend into anarchy, you actually descend into feudalism. You might have anarchy in the immediate sense, but eventually the strong are going to consolidate power and use it against the weak, and then you have no freedom. So, and the far right, like conservative view of government is that it exists solely for the protection of individual liberties. Anything beyond that is illegitimate. It's an illegitimate use of power. It's tyrannical. If the government is trying to tell you how to live your life in a way that infringes on your freedom, however righteous they might feel about it. Like, this is where I depart from Matt Walsh. He thinks the government's there to tell you what you can and can't put in your body. He thinks it's there to legislate morality. As somebody who thinks of himself as being as far right as right will go, I reject that. I'm a libertarian. I think that government is there to protect individual liberties, period.
I think that word right there, libertarian, is kind of the buzzword where I was going. So, like, you can have liberal and conservative libertarians, right?
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
because it just matters how much government is
Yeah, I
involved
think
in that. And
just quickly,
Yeah.
quickly
I want to
to put a
clarify.
point on that, I would say Joe
Small
Rogan
L.
is a
Small L.
liberal libertarian, whereas
Right.
we collectively are conservative libertarians. But that's easily the difference, I think.
I'm probably the least libertarian of the three of us.
You fascist.
I agree, and I'm the most,
Probably
because of my beliefs in personal ownership of nuclear weaponry.
Yeah, I think that's nuts. But but now we have something to fight about, so it's going to get interesting.
Yes.
But
you know
Where are you
what's
going, Dre? I'm
interesting
sorry, I
is
cut you off.
if you go I'm sorry, Brian, did you have more to your point? And we kind of interjected there, and I don't know if
that's
Well, I got to put up my Dukes with Brian now.
I was done.
So let me explain my point, what I said, Brian. So
Okay.
For the listeners that haven't listened to Brian talk a lot about all the things religious, Brian just said, if you're a Christian, you're a conservative. And if you go back to my point that I made earlier, the clinical definition of a conservative is they don't want things to change. So Brian, what you're telling me is you don't want anything to change about modern Christianity, right? You think the church is perfect and it needs to stay exactly the way it is.
Well, I don't subscribe to that definition of conservative.
But can I defend Brian here
Sure.
before Brian defends himself?
Sure. Why not?
Because
he can't defend himself. He has no agency.
that's right. He can't. I'm here.
I'm happy. I'm more than happy to let Dre do it. It's just,
And this is kind of my take on Brian, and he can tell me if I'm right. He can defend himself against me now. Is that
this has gotten so weird.
Is that Christianity's fucked up? So the original Christ movement would be the conservative piece, but since we've drifted so far off of that, we need to change. We need to guide it back to where it was, and not.
But I got to push back against what you just said.
Okay.
Jesus was a progressive with regards to religion in his time.
Sure.
He wasn't a conservative.
Now I'm going to push back on what you just said.
But if that's your starting point, then that is what you're conserving.
Agreed. Well, so you would be conserving the original church fathers.
I think we're at the root of it now.
Yeah.
And I really like, I do want to jump in here because I think we're on to something.
Go for it. I was bringing this up purposefully, right? Like I think it's a relevant conversation point, because to say you're a conservative, what is it that you are conserving? And I think that's an important articulation to make when one says I'm a conservative.
And equally important is, to what are you progressing?
Right.
So yeah, I would certainly say that Jesus was, in a very limited, specifically defined sense, a progressive, because he wanted to, like, this is, I don't know if we talked about this last week, but the previous week where we didn't record, my main point was Christianity is in essence a progressive religion. It sees history as progressing to a point,
right,
of God's kingdom on earth.
Right.
Jesus was progressive in that sense, but he was progressive by being a restorationist.
Mm-hmm.
Like, much like I would argue today, Judaism of his day had been corrupted by a lot of man-made tradition, and he wanted to bring it back to what the scriptures actually taught. So he was restorationist, and that's
so is restorationist different than conservatism, different than progressivism?
And the answer is yes.
And
yes.
Again, it all depends on what's being conserved and restored and progressed to.
Exactly.
But colloquially speaking, did we get into this last week about the my little manifesto about how Christianity is supposed to be conservative, and that it's supposed to be pointing toward this paradisical messianic age of God's kingdom on earth, but we treat that as an afterthought at most.
Yeah, we talked about it last week. We might not have put a fine point on it, but we covered it.
Meanwhile, you have progressivism as a political ideology that has this sort of godless utopia in view. It's a messianic age accomplished by the state by abandoning Christianity, and alongside that you have New Ageism and a lot of other world religions' idea of a messianic age that they got from Christianity. Like, you have the Age of Kalki in Hinduism. You have this figure in Buddhism called Maitreya, the world teacher, who's going to bring about this age of perfect enlightenment for all of mankind. Like, all of these were developed in those religions after Christianity came into contact with those cultures, and they kind of like spun it in their own image. Meanwhile, so you've got all these sort of non-Christian messianic concepts, including on the political left with progressivism, while Christianity has kind of let that fall by the wayside in favor of kind of I don't want to rehash all the same stuff I've already said, but they have a different emphases than that.
Right.
So-
So again, just for nomenclature point reasons, I would re-argue that you're not a conservative with regards to Christianity. You're a restorationist
Which is the ultimate conservatism.
or the ultimate progressive, depending on the perspective of where you're rooting your feet and which direction you're looking. Right. That's the point that I'm trying to make. Is
Right.
if you use today's church as the standard, you are not a conservative. If you're using the church of 200 AD, then maybe you're a conservative. But
Well,
how do we get from here to there?
But I think
right?
there's a different sense of like when I say when I say if you're a Christian you should be a conservative, I mean conservative in the political sense.
Agreed. Yep.
But there's also in the colloquial sense of conservatism, like you wouldn't say I'm a Christian progressive, because what that means colloquially is I want gay affirming churches and
but I
women
don't know.
preachers.
But I don't. Why does that have to be what that means? Why is
I mean,
it?
we
that
talked about it last week. That is what
Yeah.
it means.
Because it is, yeah.
No, that's what New
I'm not
Age
making the rules.
Christianity or progressive
that's
Christian. That's
Progressive
what
Christianity.
okay.
Well-
but my point is I feel like that's abdicating a word, right? Like I'm gonna to quote two of my favorite movie characters. We need to take that word back.
We did.
Well,
Right.
Yeah, and that's
Orange monkey.
I think
Brian
What?
has no point of reference there. He's like, I don't know what you guys just did.
We're taking it back. That's
I,
not racist. What are you talking about? We're taking it
hey,
back.
for anybody listening, like who's not watching the video, Dre said that he's black. It's cool. Don't cancel us. But
It's funny because these words all mean something else to whoever is hearing them,
Mhm.
right? So, like, I could just say that I'm progressive, but people like they would think that I don't know, that I believe in climate change and I drive a Subaru and I do these things and eat granola and refuse to eat a cow, which is very much not me.
I like granola.
I like granola, but I'm not going to
I
eat
do-
it
I do like granola.
exclusively. I like Subarus.
I don't think
I don't know if
care
I'd buy
for-
one, but
I do believe in climate change.
I believe that it's changing all the time and there ain't
Yeah.
shit we can do about it. That's what I believe.
And that's a we should do a show on just that. But
we probably could.
I mean, I don't know that we have much.
I mean,
to
God's
add to
gonna
that.
do it. Okay, God's changing the climate. So now,
But yeah, I think I said this in the lost episode, but yeah,
it's like an R. Kelly album.
Yeah,
Now I'm really gonna get canceled.
is
So
it?
Don't go Diddy on us.
that's how you go step in the name of love.
I
So,
believe I Can Fly is such a great song. I wish it hadn't
It
been
was a
ruined.
really good song.
he's got a lot of good songs. That's
But
why
that-
he was able to
but
do what
that-
he did, because he's got good songs.
Right.
I mean, but now it's tainted forever. But
I don't know, but
anyway,
Step in the Name of Love is gonna play at every black wedding regardless. Like, that's happening. So
yeah.
he's gonna play at the
And,
barbecue and we gonna step.
I got thoughts on Michael Jackson too, but
Yeah,
just
don't we
maybe
all?
it's a different
Why
conversation.
are you trying to hurt
But-
me right now? Like, why? Or
know
as
what?
Michael Jackson would say in the Dangerous album, why you want to trip on me? It's a
Do you
reference to
think do you think you're more hurt than I am by all the Michael Jackson stuff?
Yes.
I don't think
Yes,
you are, man.
I'll just claim dominion because I'm black, but I'm also white like him. So
And I'm
I will claim dominion over this. I have more in common with
Hey,
with
he
Michael
converted. He converted to my people.
He was
At the
he was
end.
progressively white.
But I
So-
was weird because I enjoyed Prince and Michael Jackson at the same time, which I think is taboo. So
Well, same here. But yeah, I refuse to use those terms progressive and liberal because I like Matt said, I think we're conceding too much ground.
Yeah.
I don't believe they're on the side of progress. I don't believe they're on the side of liberty. And when they use those terms and get you to use those terms, they're kind of getting you to concede things
sure.
that that should be debated, but they want to bypass that. And that's kind of how the left does that a lot. Like they kind of use all of this.
Sure.
They do all these rhetorical mind tricks to get you to concede things that that need to be argued.
And what sucks is that you have to explain all of that up front before you can
Right.
even have, you have to set all the ground rules, because if you're just trying to communicate with someone, and if you don't use the vernacular that everybody just kind of knows, then
You get soundbited into a
Right.
corner. So I was having a
Or-
conversation in real life with Jake, my buddy, who you two both know.
Yeah.
And Jake is easily more conservative than all three of us probably put together. And
even though he's a 49ers fan.
yeah, I know, right? It's
No.
kind of like,
So-
but I
continue.
used the word moderate in a political sense, and I meant it clinically. And the way Jake interpreted the use of the word moderate was to basically talk about like globalists. And he had this entirely different picture of what I was trying to paint. And it caused us to have like a 2-hour damn argument.
Right.
Simply because I used a word and I had a completely different intent of the usage of the word than how he heard me say it. And then when we finally figured out how we disconnected, I was like, wait, what? And I was like, Jake, which part of this, when I said that I'm a moderate, did you not realize that I meant something different? He's like, I thought you'd lost your mind. And like,
he's like, I was gonna have to put you down, Matthew, because I love you. I was gonna have to pull out my AR and just put one in your face. According to Wikipedia, the general beliefs of a conservative Christian. So this is
I'm glad
not
you brought it
a
back.
progressive Christian, right? They have a higher view of Scripture, that being its authoritative word of God.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one. They believe in the virgin birth of Jesus Christ. They believe in the doctrine of the Trinity, the doctrine of the deity of Jesus Christ, that he is fully God and fully human, the literal and physical resurrection of Jesus, the literal and physical return of Jesus, the belief in both literal heaven and literal hell as biblically described, and the doctrine of original sin.
So basically, if you uphold
if you're a believer,
Nicene Creed,
if you're a believer,
which is why last week every single one of those points was the opposite,
right?
In progressive Christianity,
right?
And Brian basically just said, "Yeah, you're a Christian who doesn't believe," and that was kind of what he boiled it down to. You don't believe in Christianity, but you believe in, well, I don't even know, like some kind of Jesus social movement because
you're trying to conform Christianity to yourself and the culture of the moment, whereas a believing Christian wants to conform him or herself and the culture to God.
Yeah,
it's a question of ultimacy.
Well, so then what? So I mean, so we're clear on what progressive Christianity is. I don't know that we're still clear on what is the difference between conservative Christianity and just Christianity? Like, to me, where's that distinction lie? Because
I think that's the word game that these people have played.
That was my point before about if you're a Christian, you're a conservative Christian.
And that was kind of my jab in the intro. Like, can you even be Christian without being a conservative Christian? Because otherwise, do you even lift?
Well,
right? If you don't believe in those tenets,
do you even Bible, bro?
Do you even lift?
So
and if you're not Christian, then you're not Christian, and that's
right. And it's like, cool. So just own that, and don't
say you're not Christian.
Right. Just don't say you are if you're not, and that's fine. But so whether or not, so let's take the Christianity out of the concept of progressive or conservative. Can you be a progressive person, progressively,
right?
Political.
Well,
and
what's
still be a Christian
is that conservatives are usually, or I'll say conservative, are usually known as not compassionate. They don't believe in these helps. But what's interesting to me is that whenever there's a hurricane, or whenever there's a natural disaster, or you can probably Google any one of your soup kitchens for homeless people, they're always sponsored by a church.
Mm-hmm.
They're always, the first ones on the scene is some Christian organization, even before the Red Cross. When we couldn't get out of Afghanistan and we were trying to go rescue people, it was Christian organizations that were putting planes together and getting people out of there that needed help. So it's always, I always find it interesting that, like, oh, you Christian conservatives, you don't believe in this help, and you don't want to give money to the government to do when really, no, we'll just go VFR direct. It's kind of like remember the CFC, for any Marine listening, right? They always have this combined federal campaign that comes by in this big booklet, and it's 100% contact. That's like the Marine mission. Everybody will know about this, and everybody will be pressured into paying a little bit using using automatic payment out of your check. But then when you look, only so much of it goes to overhead, and so much money that you pay goes to the actual charity itself, and then some of it goes to every single thing in the book. Well, if I don't believe in every charity in the book, and I'm donating my hard-earned cash with my whole $700 a month I made when I was a private, then I don't want to pay for these things. But if
which is a lot more generous than.
But if I call the organization and be like, hey,
but
I want to donate to XYZ org, and they're like, yep, and they will take 100% of my money. Crazy.
Yeah.
Instead of the Fed taking their cut. And I know a lot about this now, but now that I'm a government contractor and I see how much shit costs and how much they pay me and how much the government actually pays for their training, that's not me.
I think that's worth kind of camping out on a bit. This idea that conservatives in general, and also Christian conservatives, we're callous and not compassionate. We lack empathy because we don't believe.
The new meme I'm seeing the last month or so on the internet is they're going whole hog and calling conservatives sociopaths. That's the new attack. So it's not just incompassionate or callous. They're calling us sociopaths.
Right, because we don't believe in big government programs to lift up the poor. Therefore, a few years ago, this is the perfect snapshot of everything. It's probably an obscure thing, but it sticks out of my head. At some point, I think it was in 2018, it was around Christmas, Paul Ryan tweeted out something about some platitude about, remember Jesus is the reason for the season or something. Rosie O'Donnell retweeted a response saying that, calling Paul Ryan a hypocrite because he hates the poor because he supported the Trump tax plan, which favors the rich. And her rationale, as I understood it, was Paul Ryan is a hypocrite for claiming to follow Jesus, yet he voted for the Trump tax plan, which must mean he hates the poor. And because the only reason you would vote for a Republican tax plan is because you hate the poor. It never occurred to her that maybe like Paul Ryan is not like the crack expert in public finance and tax policy that Rosie O'Donnell is, and maybe he thinks that this is actually better for the poor in the long run because it helps the economy, it helps business owners employ people, which gives people more opportunity. The bottom line is she never it's not that they don't stop to consider the other side. They don't know there is another side. They don't think that far ahead. If you don't automatically agree with them that big government programs to redistribute wealth from rich people to poor people, if you're not for that, then you hate poor people. They never think about that. It's this very simplistic, frankly infantile view of how the world works that they don't think beyond, and they don't, because it requires too much mental energy to think beyond those assumptions.
Well, I don't think that's untrue on the other side of the coin. Like
What do you mean?
well, I've never seen a conservative talking head or a conservative critic of a Democratic program be introspective and think about, well, I wonder what they were actually trying to accomplish, right? Like that knee-jerk kind of open
Well,
vilification is fair game on both sides. Let's not act like it's not.
But they tell us what they think. They tell us, well, it's because we're for the poor. It's because we want big government programs to help poor people because we love poor people so much.
Whether it
And
works or not.
Yeah, and like they don't care. And if you, and by the way, Thomas Sowell, everybody should follow Thomas Sowell, read his books, watch his YouTube videos.
Why would anyone want to follow that self-loathing black man? Like,
how dare you say that about St. Thomas?
He clearly hates us, and I'm talking about my people.
I would also argue that, back to that earlier conversation, I could make a strong argument that Thomas Sowell is a progressive, but not in the sense that you would jump to a conclusion of, because he's trying to move the conversation point. He's not trying to bring it back somewhere.
Andre Bibbs, do declare Thomas Sowell a national treasure. Just to clear that up.
Seconded and anonymously passed, right? Like, meeting adjourned.
Thomas Sowell is probably in the top 10 greatest living Americans. But he was a socialist. He started out as a socialist. He studied economics and worked for various government agencies, and he was an honest socialist, and he would examine, he would analyze these programs and point out and discover, to his surprise, because he was sincere in his socialism, hey, these aren't working. These aren't bringing about the results we thought. And nobody in the bureaucracy wanted to hear it. They just shut up, put your head down, go through the motions. And that's what kind of turned him into a conservative, is experiencing that. But like, the whole Rosie O'Donnell, you're a hypocrite because you hate poor people because you voted for the Trump tax plan. That's pretty characteristic of the left. It's just they're so invested emotionally in this view of themselves as being empathetic and compassionate but they don't apply any thought to find out what, whether that works. It becomes an affectation of empathy and compassion, totally devoid of rational thought.
So our politicians, and I'm talking about the right ones, not the correct ones, but the ones on the right side of the aisle, the conservative, if you will. Are they just leftists who say they're conservative so that they can have some controlled opposition? For example, recently we've had all these Palestinian protests, or these people in favor of Palestine protesting on college campuses. And then you have Speaker Mike Johnson, you have the conservative governor of Texas coming through talking about, you can't do this, you will not protest because of anti-Semitism. Now, whether you believe in anti-Semitism or not, the freedom of speech is the freedom of speech, right? So do you actually believe in that, or do you just use it to control? I mean, we have
say that
like
again,
a bill. So there's a bill going through right now that they want to monitor speech on college campuses to make sure that there's no anti-Semitism going on. Now, I understand in like Columbia University was actually some kind of violence toward Jewish students, but look, if you can't say things that are unsavory or say things out loud that people disagree with, then we don't have a First Amendment at all. But what I do like is, so you have Governor Abbott coming in and just declaring you will not be anti-Semitic, your protest is shut down. Call the National Guard for University of Texas. Like, what, really? But then you go look at Florida and the governor down there, and I think it was FSU, so right there in Tallahassee, the capital, they shut down their protest. But here's their reason why. They say, look, you can protest, you can say anything you want to, but here's the things you cannot do. You cannot camp outside, You cannot impede people from getting to class. You cannot, be in illegal spots. You can't have signs without people holding them. Your signs can't be in the way of people getting to class. They had very specific things that they were doing wrong during their protests, and they shut that down. So you can't
Well-
camp. You can't have an encampment because you can't have tents on. And they just brought someone set up a tent. The FSU,
Well, to
campus police
be
came,
clear,
took it away.
Just to help further your point, I think in Florida, they passed out flyers
Right.
that laid out what the rules were.
Right.
And they, I
And
don't
also
think
gave the
I don't think,
consequences.
yeah,
If
they
you
don't-
do this, you will be suspended, and
right,
you
but
will not.
they didn't use any force, or minimal force at least. They just
Right.
said, here's the rules and here's what the consequences will be. And they cleared out on their own. In Texas, they brought in the National Guard to remove people. And then after the fact, the governor tweeted out, or X'd, or whatever. I'm just gonna,
Sure.
let's just say tweet, because
Sure.
because I'm a conservative and that's what it is. I'm going to conserve that it's Twitter, not X, even though X is a
No,
cooler
that's-
name.
No,
But I
that's
know
dead
tweet.
naming. You can't do that.
Why we
I'm
Yes.
doing it. I'm doing it.
But,
But,
I think they're
but-
still
but-
called tweets, though.
I think they are.
Well, no, they're called X's, but
No, they're
who cares?
not.
So-
Nobody
All my
calls
exes
them.
live in Texas.
You don't X
Nobody
out.
calls them that, but that's what they're, anyway.
No, I think they're still called
Governor
tweets.
Greg Abbott tweeted out that it was because of anti-Semitism, which anti-Semitism is like, how do you define that?
Right.
It's an attitude and it's speech. It's not necessarily punching Jews in the face or
Why is it illegal to have a thought?
Right.
yeah, I
That's,
agree.
that's
I
the real
totally agree.
problem. It's not.
It
It's
is-
not
it is the real
appropriate,
problem.
but it shouldn't be
Right.
legal or
Sure.
illegal
Yeah,
because
and I don't
it's just hate speech or
and I
hate.
don't necessarily disagree with him bringing in the National Guard if that's what it takes to stop public violence and interference.
How do we know
with-
that that's what it needed? He didn't even explore
I don't,
other
I
options.
don't know. I'm just saying I'm not in principle opposed to that if that's what it takes. But it was the explanation after the fact that was the problem.
This
Which
is a so-called
why-
conservative that's now shitting on the First Amendment.
Yeah, and I think that's
Well, so I missed the opportunity to clarify earlier when we basically said, your only two options are progressive or conservatism, right? And it misses the entire space of classic liberalism. And I think that's a problem because of
Yeah.
the fact that liberalism and progressivism get clumped together. But classical liberalism is nothing like modern progressivism.
I'm a liberal in the classic sense.
Absolutely. I think all three of us are. I think we fall
Yeah.
easily in that category. And to be fair, for anybody listening, the first time I was told by someone that I was a classical liberal, I thought we were going to have to fight. And then I went and looked it up and read it. And I was like, oh, I'll be damned.
You watch your mouth, motherfucker.
Right. And then I looked it up and I was like, I'm going to beat up the fool and tell me them lies.
Yeah, I do. Whatever I tell like people on the left that I'm a liberal in the classic sense,
Right.
they're always like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
What do you like? And then they find out I'm not actually on their side. I don't think
Right.
we should trans the kids. Then they're
But-
mad at me.
But it's interesting because I was just doing some quick reading while you guys were talking about. I wanted to clarify my thoughts on classical liberalism. But this article makes a point that the founding fathers were classical liberals to the extent that the concept of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness was actually ripped from John Locke. That was life, liberty, and property. So, like the fact that we stole a line, but then made it liberal, right? To
Right.
not make it about money, and it was about the ability to go make your life. I think that really speaks a lot to that.
Or change your station, right? We don't
Right.
live in this caste
And that
system.
and that's a big difference, right? We didn't have gentry and the landed establishment and whatnot in America, and that's always been a big difference here, which is
The
why
whole-
basically there's a belief that progressivism took root and ran away the way it did because there was not a natural opponent to it, like in Europe, where there
the-
was so
the whole
much
th-
royalty and
Yeah, yeah,
and
right.
old money, right, that went back hundreds of, thousands of
Well,
years, not just a few
there-
generations.
There wasn't an economic opposition to it, but there's a principled opposition to it. And
Right, but at the time that wasn't part of the movement, is the point, right? Like classical liberalism was about laissez-faire and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't
Yeah.
about, gender affirming care and all that kind of stuff that's become clumped together and part of the same kind of battle cry.
yeah, I think we need to address why being a Christian should mean being a conservative.
Okay, why?
I was hoping you guys would.
I mean,
I teed it up for you guys.
I mean, I'm assuming I know where you can go, but I said it earlier, and I asked the counter question: can a person be progressive and be a Christian? And
No.
well, I know the answer, and the answer is yes, because you have to quantify what progressivism means in that person.
It means
Right.
where are you going, or where are you trying
Okay.
to go?
Can
Where are
you
you
be a
trying to
Christian-
progress to?
Can
So
you
if
be a
you're trying to
Christian-
progress society into a positive space, or what you believe or deem is a positive space, and you want to do it using Christian values, then I would say yes, you're
Exactly.
progressive and a Christian at the same time. Because if you look at our society today, they do not hold Christian values.
Correct.
But
And if-
colloquially speaking, though,
And if you're trying to stay conservative with our American values as they stand today, then you're not being Christian,
Right.
right? You
Yeah,
want to
I agree with
progress
that, right?
towards
So
something else.
To use actual politics, right, and not just like hand waving politics. There are, I believe, Democrats that exist, to include, we probably have some Democratic leaders that are Christians, and in order to do that, they have to vote against things that are popular to their constituency, right? So then you run into the problem of, do you get reelected, right? And how do you walk that line between elections and voting your conscience when it comes to issues, right? And
Or
I
how
don't
do you
know
s-
the answer.
How do you stay principled?
Right. And I haven't done any research on this. I think it would be interesting to see if there are, and I'm using this as an idea. I'm not saying this is a thing that happens, but I wonder if there aren't, say senators and representatives that just abstain from certain votes
Well,
in order to not have to vote their conscience.
well,
And to
Rand
not,
Paul is one of them. I think one of these bills recently that had to do with something. I wish I remember what it was, but he didn't vote, and I would guess it's because it goes against everything that we know Rand Paul to be as a libertarian.
Mhm.
And
isn't he a
then
Republican though?
he is a Republican, but he didn't vote with Republicans because this was a bipartisan bill. I wish I remember what it was. I can't think of it off the top of my
I think
head.
Matt's talking about from the other side, though.
But
from
but
he is talking about the other side, but it's
it
the
plays
same
both
principle.
directions.
Right.
Yeah, it
It-
plays
you
in
know,
both directions.
So
See,
I think people just abstain from the vote. So it makes me wonder, whenever you see an absent vote, if maybe it's either
They weren't on
conscious,
vacation. They're
Why-
sitting
or-
there. They
why
just
would a
didn't go to work
Christian
that
be a
day. They're
Democrat?
like,
Or
I'm
they
just going to stay at
know-
home.
they know they're in a blue district that won't
Right.
tolerate, that move.
Right.
why would a genuine Christian be a Democrat though?
That's a different conversation. I don't know how to
I
answer
thought
that.
I thought that was this conversation. I thought that
Well,
was
No, I
Yeah,
said,
Matt, you
could be?
asserted that you believe there are some Christians that are Democrats.
Yeah, you're asking it in the opposite direction. Like, why would a Christian decide to be Democrat? And I'm saying it in the other direction. A Democrat can decide to be Christian. That's what I'm trying to say.
Oh,
but
I mean,
but
okay.
but can they still be a Democrat if they do that is the question.
Again, that's exactly why I just invented this theory about, can they just
Right.
not vote on certain things, and can they get away with it long enough that they can,
Well,
they can vote on enough
maybe
of the other
they're
things.
maybe they're a classical Democrat.
Right.
Okay, what do you mean? What do you mean by that though?
I don't know. I think that if you were to just take the writings of John F. Kennedy and place them today, that he'd be considered some kind of far right extremist.
Bill Maher strikes me as somebody that would be considered an old school Democrat, right? He
Or
doesn't agree with all of the woke
even
things that are
even
going
Bill
on.
Clinton in the
But,
90s.
but he hates Christianity.
well,
That's a different issue.
that is a different issue.
I'm
No,
not
but
saying
that's
I'm not
the-
saying
that's-
Bill
that was the
Maher is a
question I
Christian
asked, though.
Democrat. No, I'm saying a Bill Maher like person. I'm
or
sure there's
a
other people that
politically
think
Bill,
like
a Bill Maher
Maher.
politically. But then again, to Brian's point, like he's the way he is because he is an atheist.
I mean,
And
possibly.
he's the way he is politically because I mean he's the guy that came up and said, "Hey, listen, abortion really is killing babies, and we just need to own that."
Right.
The best thing about Bill
Right.
Maher is that I think he is so devoid of a moral compass that he doesn't even realize he holds positions he should be ashamed of. I think that's
I don't. I mean, I think it goes back to him being an atheist. I mean,
Because I think Brian, your moral compass comes from being a Christian.
I think a moral compass, period, requires God.
We've had that conversation before too, right? Like that's been
Eh.
that's a show, by the way, guys. If you rewind back weeks, we actually talked about
Yeah.
this, and actually we get heated over it. So check that episode
a
out.
moral compass, a compass requires magnetic north. You need an absolute reference point. for
you
a
could use
compass
a
to
compass
work.
off of an absolute south.
But the point is, it has to be absolute. There has to be a reference point that
Yeah.
is absolute and unchanging, and you navigate by that.
Yeah.
Bill Maher doesn't have that, or whatever the source of whatever magnetic source his needle is pointing to. It's not north. It's something more localized.
Well, it's because he's further west.
What?
The offset because of the Hudson River, or because of the Hudson mining deposit. You do remember how to orient a compass, right?
Yeah.
North
I
is
mean,
not north.
north is where the ore deposit is.
Yeah. In the
So
United
depending
States,
on where you are, is
Conus,
the
in
degrees
Conus
off of.
America, you have to make an adjustment depending on how far west you are of the Hudson River.
I guess I don't remember how to
Yeah.
orientate a compass.
There's a material amount of
that helps
nickel.
my analogy, though.
Yeah, there's actually a material amount of, I think it's nickel ore in the Hudson that causes all compasses in North America to be slightly off because it pulls the needle depending on how close you are to New York. Like, you don't remember that, or you don't
I don't remember
that from
I
land
don't-
nav classes?
I do not remember that.
Yeah.
I don't remember anybody mentioning that. I just assumed it was pointing to the Fortress of Solitude in
Nope.
the North Pole.
Nope, it's trying, but the ore in the Hudson is fighting that. Yeah, that's a thing.
Oh, okay. Well, that.
Did you
Whatever.
even boot camp, dude?
I mean, you guys
What are you,
were
a
there.
lieutenant?
You guys were there for. Okay, so for the listeners, I was Dre's squad leader, so he knows I was in the Marine Corps.
That's true. You were definitely in the Marine Corps. It doesn't
Good thing
mean
he
you
was
were
never
good
your
at it.
team. Good thing you were never his team lead on a deployment.
Right. And it's a good thing you had me as your fire team leader so I could steer all the people you're fucking up to go the right way. So
Actually, I outsourced most of that to you. You're my fire team leader. You're my assistant squad leader.
I believe that. I believe that's true.
So I would just like end a formation. I'd just be like, hey, just do what Dre says. I'm gonna go. Really how it went.
Fun times.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a little bit of a.
So did we solve Christianity and politics?
Not even close.
Huh. What questions have we left unanswered?
I don't know, but you brought up a whole different question that I think we need to have a conversation around for a future show. Who are the top 10 living American treasures? I think we need to actually do a list.
That's
because there's no way we could cover that right now. I mean, Thomas Sowell might even be number 1 on the list, but he's clearly on the list. But
yeah,
living, huh?
Yeah, living versus all time. We could do both, but I think the show would be better about living. But we'll have to hold that one for another episode.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
And then I also, which caused me to have another idea in my head about who are my favorite progressives of all time.
Progressives in the Matt sense, or
other than Teddy Roosevelt?
clinical definition, not modern colloquial connotation. Yeah, because off the top of my head, my first 2 favorites are Theodore Roosevelt and Jesus Christ.
Abe Lincoln.
Yeah, Yeah, he fits.
You know, Lincoln said
Nikolai
some interesting
Tesla.
interesting things.
Tesla be a good one.
Labor is prior to and independent of capital. Capital is only the fruit of labor and could never have existed if labor had not first existed. Labor is the superior of capital and deserves much higher consideration.
Are you trying to tell us that Lincoln was a commie?
I mean, I think he was trying to say, like, yo, you don't own slaves, they're people and their
Right.
labor
He
matters.
was trying to make a different point, which can
Okay.
definitely
Right.
be
But because of this war,
I feel like that's going to come back
Lincoln
to
is
bite
the
me.
first dude to steal from us federally with the progressive income tax.
yeah.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah. Yeah, but it didn't get out of control until Woodrow Wilson.
I do think
My man. Fuck.
While I would have fought on the Union side, I like to think I think some bad stuff came out of that war.
Plenty of bad stuff came out. And also because the guy that kind of orchestrated it didn't get to finish. He didn't get to orchestrate the Reconstruction. He got shot in the back of the head. Right. When a piece of poor white trash shot another piece of poor white trash. Was that I'm gonna get you, sucker? Abraham Lincoln was a piece of poor white trash. Until another piece of poor white trash shot him in the head. The end. But yeah, and the dude from Tennessee took over and was the first cat to get impeached. Because he didn't give two fucks about the Reconstruction. Right. So yeah.
Well, I think we covered a lot of ground tonight, guys.
We did.
I know we called Lincoln a commie.
I didn't call him a commie. I asked.
Are you trying to say that Jesus Christ can't hit a curveball?
Ah, yes, the Messiah.
Oh, Jesus, I like him very much, but he no help with curveball.
It occurred to me the other day
Not what he came for.
When I was watching I don't think I mentioned it on the show. I watched there's a Netflix movie called oh shoot. What's it, Freud's Last Session.
You did mention that, yeah.
Okay. It was really good. But there was a moment where C.S. Lewis was leaving and he runs into Freud's daughter, Anna, I think was her name. And one of them says something, the other one quotes a line of poetry, and then the other one finishes the line. And I remember thinking in the moment, it's kind of weird that, that was such a thing in culture back in that period, and we don't do it now. And I was like, we just replaced it with movie quotes.
We did, yeah.
Because that's all. We have the same amount of things memorized. It's just not as poetic because it's movies instead.
Because we watch stuff and nobody picks up a poetry book and reads it.
Yeah, my dad actually mentioned that to me when he was here in town a couple of weeks ago. He was like, "How do you watch so many movies?" That's what he said.
That's good.
I was like, I don't know. I like movies. I was like, I think it was an era thing. Like, kids in the, those of us that
the VHS era, especially.
Well, and the movie theaters, right? Like it was going to the movies on the weekends. And then the minute we could get VHS tapes, we spent our weekends at, Blockbuster and, Moment of Silence.
I have a whole blog about how consuming stories is such a integral part of our lives as humans.
It is,
which gives us common ground, right? Also,
which is why it's good that the Christian movement is going to make good movies instead of things that suck.
Oh, I didn't say that on camera. So I just earlier tonight I watched Unsung Hero, which is the real life story of the two gentlemen that formed the movie, the band for King and Country, which is a Christian rock band. Rock might be, no, it's a rock band, but it was, and my point of mentioning that to the guys earlier, and I forgot to say it on camera or on the show, is that it was really good. It was really well acted, well directed, an incredible story, and like everything about the movie was top shelf. So even if you're not into Christian movies, maybe you watched a couple of those, we all know the Kevin Sorbo movies and all that, right? And you're just like, ugh, kind
it's just Hallmark, but
yeah,
for Christians.
Yeah, like this was a legit good movie and could win awards if enough people go see it. So I highly recommend it. I've watched For King and Country a couple of times in concert because my wife's a big fan. But everybody go watch that movie. It's good.
I think it's what's wrong with movies today, right? So we're slamming message in front of the story. We're prioritizing the message, whatever it is that we want to get across, without telling the story behind it. When before, even though Hollywood was super left, they told a compelling story and just kind of wove the message in between it. And that's when the problems with like Christian movies is like, we're going to pound Jesus at you, but it doesn't matter about our special effects. It doesn't matter about the story. It doesn't matter about the acting. It doesn't matter about the camera angles, because Jesus matters.
Well, and that's like the 10 Commandments, right? The 10 Commandments are considered an all-time great movie. It's an American classic cinema piece that happened to be slightly Christian, right?
Sure.
But
Jewish. It's Jewish.
Well, I mean, I've probably
Brian has issues with the theme of the 10 Commandments.
Oh, right.
Maybe
okay,
that's
fine.
an issue.
But
have I talked about that on the show before?
No, we haven't. But there's no way you could say that it wasn't a religious.
Oh, definitely,
movie,
yeah.
Right.
But
that's all I'm saying. Whether it's theologically sound is a different issue.
That was definitely the cultural framework of movies in the 50s and 60s, and probably just then.
Right.
I'm thinking of 70s movies, and I don't think I can make that claim, but I will say that growing up in the 80s, this is probably a different show topic, but we're so far off. We're so far past our show topic anyway. But yeah, Superman the movie was like super Christian. Without trying to be. Like, I didn't Matt's got issues with this. Marlon Brando put Superman in a Christmas tree star and sent him to Earth. So that, hey, we should do a whole episode on Superman the movie and the Christian
I'm okay with it because it happens to be like I'm very fond of that movie. It's it holds. First of all, Superman's my guy.
Black Bull upside down.
He's my guy. Second, it's the very first film I've seen in the movie theater. My mom took me to see Superman the movie, and it's a core memory for me. And she probably remembers it completely different. Like, no, I didn't, but she did. I think that, and also the Lord of the Rings animated film. I watched that in the 70s as well. All the other movies before that, my core memory watching movies was always in the drive-in, and my dad's
You watched Lord of the Rings in the theater?
Yeah.
Not
that animated
Jack,
thing?
not the
No, I know the animated one. I know. I saw it also. I don't remember it being a theatrical release though.
It was a theatrical, it was big time.
Okay.
Everything was with a theatrical release back then.
I guess.
They never did.
Yeah,
they didn't do direct to
I guess at one point the news was a theatrical release, wasn't it?
Yeah, because in the 70s they didn't have home movies.
Right. No, that's fair. I remember seeing it on like HBO or cable or whatever.
Though I remember in the late 70s, this is way off topic, but it's fun anyway. They had a thing called like On TV or Select TV. And basically you would get a newspaper or a magazine in the mail if you had a subscription to this thing, because it was closed circuit like. And basically the movie would come on at 8, and you turn your box and the movie would pop on your screen, and then you watch it and you turn it off. I remember my dad, we would watch like the 11 o'clock news after that. What I see, what's a movie I remember? The Champ, starring Rick Schroeder and John Voight, was the movie I remember on TV, and it made my parents cry. Well, my dad not so much, but my mom bawled her eyes out at little Rick saying, "Wake up, Champ, wake up, wake up."
I remember that movie.
And then he became the rich kid on TV, and then he was on at NYPD Blue after that. But
yeah,
Rick.
I certainly there was a lot of pollen floating through the theater during Unsung Hero.
It
was a lot of what?
Pollen.
Someone was chopping up some onions.
Oh, there were some.
My allergies kept firing up, and I was like, "Oh man!"
Which meant you were crying like a little girl. You were just sobbing, sobbing like a little girl.
Yeah,
it's funny because the older I get, the more references I have that make me sad. Like things touch me differently because because now I have references of things that I really care about. Something reminds me of my daughter, or reminds me of a time or a place. And those sometimes I'll be driving at like 4 o'clock in the morning and hear like a commercial, and I'm like, man, I blame my stroke. But
Ain't it funny how a melody can bring back a memory? It takes you to another place in time.
Yeah. It's pretty good. A nice pull.
Brian, that's a country western song.
I know the song.
Okay.
He's from Oklahoma, for crying out loud. He probably
I live in Oklahoma. I don't know if I'm from Oklahoma.
Do you know where you're from?
Whoa,
that's
ouch, man.
I feel like you're coming at me,
dude.
You said it, not me. I was clarified. I was like, do you not know where you're from?
Hey, he's not even a military brat. That's fucked up, dude.
I came to Oklahoma my junior year in high school.
Oh.
Yeah, you're not from
Oklahoma. Okay, yeah, you're not from Oklahoma.
So
where are you
from? I'm kind of from everywhere east of Oklahoma.
Where were you born?
Ohio.
Okay.
And then New Jersey, and then Arkansas, and then Florida, and then Arkansas, and
I stopped
New
caring.
Hampshire.
I just wanted to know where you were born.
Okay. Well,
I don't even know what we're talking about anymore. So,
yeah.
Right?
So for the listeners, do you want us to do a Superman episode? Because I got a lot to say about that. I don't know.
Matt's gonna like log in 50 different times.
I'm gonna go turn on the bot machine.
No. No.
But we could there's a lot there to Superman.
Epic music.
I got
Williams.
I got a lot to say about Superman. I grew up on Superman. Superman was kind of my religion before I was a Christian. And I probably became a Christian not incidentally because of Superman.
That's okay.
Which I'm happy to explain. It's not as idolatrous or blasphemous as it might sound.
I mean, sounded pretty idolatrous and blasphemous, but
I'm happy. I'm happy.
It sounds idiotic, moronic, and
imbecilic.
He just called you a retard.
That was the other word I was looking for. Imbecilic. Yeah. Thank you, Brian.
It's okay. I will look if the listeners want to hear it, I will defend against that charge, and I think it'll be I think there'll be some good content there.
But I think also you guys need to work on your top 10 living Americans.
Yeah, for sure we do. Yeah, I mean we can go back to being segmented.
Yeah. So
anyway, do you have any final thoughts there, Brian? Other than Superman?
Final thoughts.
I mean, I love Superman as much as anybody.
I kind of feel like there's so much we left so much ground left untrodden here that I wouldn't know where to start.
Okay. Matt,
that's a great final thought, by the way.
I wish we had that. I wish we had that last episode, man.
I wish we talked about other stuff, but we didn't. That's my final thought.
I got a lot of stuff, but there's so much. I'm just going to keep it to myself. Okay, keep your secrets, Brian.
Why are you gatekeeping?
I know, right?
Why are you gatekeeping? People need information, and you're just fucking holding on to it. I don't know.
I mean,
I think my final thought is
Rosie O'Donnell was right.
I don't know. I think we need to take a lot of words back. That's my final thought.
You're gonna have to edit much of this.
We need to stop letting a certain small minority of our population have so much psychological control over our dialogue.
Well, they hold the intellectual position, right?
I don't care.
They're in our institutions that
I don't care.
That hold all these intellectual
I can fight better
opinions.
than they can.
What was the quote you had today?
Oh, I was just pulling it up because I knew exactly what you meant. I'm looking for it. Go ahead, Brian. What were you saying?
Well, it kind of circles back to our talk about vigilantism and Death Wish and Hollywood movies and stuff, and harsh words alone would be enough to knock them over.
So the quote is by Thomas Aquinas, and the quote is, "He who is not angry when there is just cause for anger is immoral." Why? Because anger looks to the good of justice. And if you can live amid injustice without anger, you are immoral as well as unjust. End quote.
Like it.
Yeah, I dig it.
I love it.
That's my final thought.
I think that's why most decent people are kind of pissed off all the time these days. And on that note, stay
Anyway.
curious, stay enlightened.
I guess we'll catch you next week. God bless.